because they want to have a relationship with God. And someone who's doing it not for any duress, not for any compulsion, not for any coercion, because they want a relationship with God, as obviously is true for everyone that we call Noachai today, is one of the Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam, is one of the righteous Gentiles, and does have a portion in the world to come. So every single Noachai, which of course is a term we use today, means by definition Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam. There's no Noachai today who's not Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam. This is a short, and I found it fascinating, Hasidic discourse of the Lubavitcher Rebbe on the Torah portion of Lech Lecha, which is a portion where Abraham has his circumcision, the first person circumcised by act of man. Some people prior to him were actually born circumcised because they were so holy, but Abraham, God let him do it himself at age 99. So this is a talk where the Rebbe speaks about the shift in Abraham through the circumcision and how that affected the nations of the world. And the Rebbe said this in the fall of 1983. This was very interesting to me because this is already a time when the Rebbe is focusing on the Noachai to reach the world with the concept of being a Noachai. So I thought it's interesting taking the ideas of the Rebbe and then connecting them to the idea of the Noachai. So this talk doesn't directly speak about the Noachai, but it speaks about non-Jews, all potential Noachai. That's actually interesting because someone was recounting, I believe this was in the 70s, he was a university student in London, and he was the head of the university's orchestra. And he had come to New York and he had a private audience with Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he asked Lubavitcher Rebbe, is this appropriate? Here he is, a religious Jew. And is he just, okay, whatever he's going for in university, that's for his future livelihood. But is he, frittering away his time being the head of the university's orchestra? And the Rebbe said, no. The Rebbe said that, there's a place for that as well. And obviously this gives you a lot of joy. But the Rebbe said, you should make sure to share with all the fellow students, obviously we're primarily non-Jews, about the Noachai law. That's how you should utilize this opportunity to serve God, as well as enjoying your passion for classical music, by reaching out to all these students and explaining to them what it means to be a Noachai. Which, of course, for this university student, it was like, what? What's a Noachai? Totally not on his radar, totally not what anyone in the world was discussing at that time, but the Rebbe already was thinking about it then. Again, very innovative, very radical. Now, once the Rebbe puts something out, it sort of filters into the world. So now the world, or the religious Jewish world, on some level is aware of the idea of the Noachai, but in the 70s, nobody was aware of that concept. This discourse is not a talk. This is a discourse, meaning it's from a deeper Hasidic level of innovation. This discourse, the Rebbe is focusing on how Abraham changed through the circumcision and how that change affected the nations of the world, which today, of course, means 8 billion. Not what it meant then, but that's what it means now. That it says that when Abraham was circumcised, God changed his name. Before the circumcision, his name was Abram. And after the circumcision, it was Abraham, meaning in the Hebrew, it's from Avram to Avraham. A letter, a hey, a Hebrew letter, sounding equivalent to the H, was added to his name. God explains that now his energy is shifting and he's now becoming, which would, so to speak, be spelled out with the name, with this new additional letter, like the father, the leader, the master of the nation. So what does this mean? So Abraham is circumcised, and suddenly now he's the father, master, leader of the nation. What does it do with the circumcision? What does the circumcision have to do with how Abraham's now interacting with the whole world around him, which is, of course, obviously not Jewish world? What does that have to do with his circumcision? Abraham was the human embodiment of God's kindness. And as the embodiment of kindness, kindness was flowing to the world, including, of course, to all of mankind, which means to all the Gentiles of the world, because that was the world. This flow of kindness didn't begin with Abraham's physical birth, some 99 years before his circumcision. From the beginning of time, there was a flow of kindness to the world way before Abraham physically was on this planet, but it was all coming from Abraham's energy. So the entire world, including all mankind, which are all Gentiles, are being fed by the kindness of Abraham. And then Abraham had the circumcision. And by the circumcision, something shifted. He didn't shift from being absolute kindness, but something shifted vis-a-vis his relationship to the world. Now, it's interesting because you can say, well, absolute kindness, what was that manifestation? Because people were healthier, The air was less polluted. They lived longer lives, all of which is true, true, and true. But the greatest manifestation of Abraham's free kindness to the nations of the world was the fact that very high souls came to the nations of the world. Meaning, the concept of Jew began with Abraham. The patriarchs, in a sense, were viewed as Noachites. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, they were all, in a sense, Noachites, because Jewish didn't really officially begin until the giving of the Torah, which was many generations later, 7 generations from Abraham to the giving of the Torah. At the same time, Abraham is viewed as the first Jew. So he's a Jew, but it's not yet the rules and protocols that are coming to place by the giving of the Torah. It's a different dimension, but he's the first Jew, which means until him, there were no Jews, but they were very godly people. There was always a very holy, godly person, because actually the world can't exist if there's not a very holy, godly person. So from the beginning of time until Abraham, there was always a very godly person in the world, but he wasn't a Jew. He was a godly person. Will these godly people all come back by the resurrection of the dead? I absolutely believe so, 100%, no question at all. Yet still technically, we don't view them as Jews. So how is this possible that amid the nations of the world were people possessing very great souls? Through the kindness of Abraham. Again, because Abraham was such free-flowing kindness that literally God's attribute of kindness said, I'm out of business, I'm out of commission. Abraham's nurturing the world with kindness, not me. So from this enormous kindness that Abraham showered on the world, holy souls came down to the non-Jews. Like, for example, I said from the beginning of time, there always was a holy soul, and the first Jew we view as Abraham. Very extreme example. Of course, all the holy souls are very extreme examples, because there was usually like one very holy person and the rest of the world was, forget it. Methuselah. Methuselah lived the longest of any human. Not so that years and years and years that he was given express his greatness, his godliness, that he had so many years. Not only that, the entire time he lived, he protected the people from the punishment, the divine retribution of the great flood. Meaning, already in Methuselah's times, the people were evil enough. They deserved to have this flood and wipe away the world, besides Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and 3 daughters-in-law. But the Mabul, the great flood, did not come. Why? Because of the people's virtues? No, because of Methuselah's. Methuselah was so godly that he could literally protect the entire world. Even more than that, the flood began right after he passed away, because I'm saying he protected the world with his merit. No, the flood began 7 days after he passed away, because God gave the world those 7 days to properly mourn Methuselah before the advent of the great flood. So look what's happening. This person, this unbelievably great holy person, is so spiritually powerful that he not only protected the entire world that was full of corrupt, evil people during his lifetime, he even held off the punishment for 7 days after he passed away. That is an incredibly godly soul. And this person was not technically a Jew. Again, the first Jew is Abraham. So here's Abraham, flowing kindness to the world on many levels, including the most significant, which is the most spiritual, that these souls are coming down to the nations of the world. And that was from the beginning of time until Abraham's circumcision, when he was 99 years. And when he was circumcised, all the rules changed, because the circumcision was like separating him from the world, that he no longer was part and parcel of the world. He was a Jew. And that's why I said at this point, he now becomes the leader and master of the world, because in a sense, he's really not within the world. He's separate from the world. Until then, he was within the world, one of the world, and therefore bringing down spiritual energy to his compatriots, to the other people of the world. But by the circumcision, that changed. Because now he's not part of them. Now he's separate. Now he's a Jew. So he no longer is sending down this spiritual energy to the world. Well, that seems like not good news for the world. Like, here's all these great souls that literally from the people of the world, that what we read about in the scriptures, in the first, portion, when we're reading about these holy people, they were all from the world. And now suddenly that dried up. We don't do that anymore. So that seems like going down. But we know there's no concept of just going down. God doesn't do that. Every descent has to lead to an ascent. Every down has to lead to a greater up. If it doesn't lead to a greater up, it's not valid. God doesn't work that way. God doesn't just work with downs. It always has to lead to an upward movement. So what's the upward movement? I mean, we understand for Abraham, so to speak, he got holier and closer to God. So for him, of course, there's an upward movement. But it's not there. What about for the rest of the world? So something shifted for the rest of the world as well. What shifted for the rest of the world is that now we begin the concept of converts. Meaning, before Abraham's circumcision, there was, like, in a sense, no need to convert, no push to convert, because you could be very holy and live within the world. You could be one of the world and have this very holy soul. So there wasn't the same impetus to convert. But after the circumcision, no, that dried up. We're not sending that caliber of soul down to the nations of the world, but we're opening up for the nations of the world a different channel, which is a channel of conversion. I thought that was fascinating how we're looking at Abraham, and we're thinking, Abraham's doing his own thing, so to speak, or Abraham's doing his Jewish thing. And we're told, no. Yeah, that's true, and that's true. But Abraham's also changing the spiritual dynamics of the entire world. Then the Rebbe added something I thought was fascinating. The Rebbe says we could see the difference between the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Esau. Ishmael was Abraham's son before he was circumcised. He was born 13 years before the circumcision. Esau was Abraham's grandson, his son Isaac's son, who is the father of, you could say, if you will, broadly the Western world. From Esau came Rome, came, Western culture. From Ishmael came some of the Arabic world and the Arabic culture. So Ishmael was like the father of some of the Arabic nations, and Esau is a father of some of the Western world. So we could, in very broad strokes, look at Ishmael as the Arabic world and Esau as the Western world. This is very interesting because we don't find so many converts from the descendants of Ishmael. I'm not saying there's not. We don't find too many converts from the Arabic worlds. We do see converts, throughout all the generations, even though it was quite dangerous in medieval times and also beyond that. But we do see converts in the Western world. But we don't see a parallel number of converts in the Arabic world. But we do see very spiritual people in the Arabic world, far more spiritual than we find in the Western world. And the Rebbe says this is exactly coming from their ancestors and their timeline vis-a-vis Abraham. Ishmael was born before the circumcision. So Ishmael was still in the time of great souls being given to the nations of the world. Esau was to the circumcision. Esau was the son of Isaac, who was obviously born a year after the circumcision. So Esau is very well after the circumcision, and Ishmael is 13 years before the circumcision. So Ishmael sort of representationally is the energy of the world prior to the circumcision, represent the world post the circumcision. So therefore, from Ishmael's descendants, we have some very spiritual people representative of this idea of the high souls in the nations of the world. And from Esau's descendants, we have many great converts. Many great converts came from the Western world. Some of our holiest sages were the descendants of converts. Rabbi Akiva, who, in a sense, it says all Torah comes through Rabbi Akiva. Generally, he's viewed as the son of a convert. So in this discourse, the Rebbe refers to him as a convert himself. Rabbi Meir, who also is usually viewed as descendants of converts here. He's referred to as a convert himself. Rabbi Meir, I believe, was a descendant of a Roman general who was sent to destroy Jerusalem. And through whatever he realized and came to questioning various, spiritual sources, he understood the power that's destroying Jerusalem and the power of Jerusalem. And he's like, I don't want to be that destroyer. Like, I want to be part of Jerusalem, not its destruction. And he ran away, fled from the Caesar, and converted. And we see other great sages that were descendants of converts or converts themselves, like Onkelos, who was a nephew of the Caesar of Rome. So it's interesting, the Rebbe says, that we see in Ishmael these very high, more spiritually minded people, and we see in the descendants of Esau people that are like, well, we don't have no spirituality, we're converting. Spiritual minded people without that spiritual energy, that therefore actually have a different spiritual energy, the energy of conversion. And I was thinking, like, wow, I found it fascinating. And I'm like, how does this relate to Noachites? So as Noachites, how do you process this information?
Is that a rhetorical question or not?
No, I wanted answers. I want your answers.
Oh, because I'm still in the process of processing. I'm trying to think that through.
I went through it a little quickly.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you could repeat the question, because sorry, I don't know if I didn't catch it all or what.
So here the Rebbe is explaining what I thought was this fascinating thing in the development of the world, the people of the world, that originally they themselves possessed high souls, really high souls, but they were not considered Jews. They were considered people of the world with high souls. Like somehow they had high souls, and they do. And those, obviously, every one of those people with very high souls is coming back by the resurrection of the dead. They all have the soul to come back, but they're not considered Jews specifically. Jewish started with Abraham, and Jewish really, really, of course, started with the giving of the Torah. But here we have, from the beginning of time until Abraham's circumcision, through the kindness of Abraham, that he's flowing down and giving the world ultimate kindness, drawing down these great souls to the world. And then from the circumcision, where there's like a separation of Abraham and the rest of the world, now he's not flowing down these great souls to the world. No, now the souls are going to go to the Jewish people. But now there's a new option for the world that didn't exactly exist before. So it's not a lower option, it's a different option. There's the option of themselves having great souls, and then there's the option of converting. And then the Rebbe went into this whole idea of Ishmael's descendants from the Arabic, or even from the Arabic world. Like, you have some very spiritual people there, akin to this idea of the great souls. And Esau's descendants, Esau was post the circumcision, where we don't really see the same level of great souls, but we do see many converts, and actually very great converts, very, very special holy people that converted, that came from, the Western world, descendants of Esau. So we really see here, I thought it was just amazing how here's Abraham, he's doing his thing, so to speak. God's representative on planet Earth and having a circumcision. But what he was doing for the world from the beginning of time, obviously way before he was physically born, from the beginning of time until the circumcision, and then through the circumcision, how now the focus of his energy changed, but how he's in a different way giving kindness to the world and really opening up this energy of conversion. First, he was opening up this energy that these holy souls could be in the world. And now he's opening up this energy of conversion. So in this entire Hasidic discourse, which obviously is short, and obviously I didn't give over all of its details, I made it shorter, briefer, but in his Hasidic discourse, the Rebbe does not mention Noachide. That word is not in the Hasidic discourse. This is already in 1983, in the fall of 83, where the Rebbe is very into talking and promoting the idea of reaching the world with the seven Noachide. And here he's giving this whole discourse really focused on the world, though he's not specifically relating it to Noachide. So my question was, to Noachide, how do you process this information? What does it mean to you? Natalie, now that you got my question.
Well, I've got kind of a couple of thoughts. One, my first thought when you were describing Abraham was like, geez, I would love if somebody were to describe me as the embodiment of kindness. That's a goal. Because that just sounds wonderful. I should make that a goal. And then then the next thought was that it kind of answered questions that I had reading the Bible stories, especially early Genesis as a little kid, talking about like these other people other than Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses. You know, how are these other people relating to God, and how did that all work? The third thought kind of brings up the age-old, I feel like, new Noahide question of like, well, if there aren't necessarily these souls in the general population these days, it brings up the age-old question of should I stay a Noahide or just convert? So those are my first impressions.
All of them make sense. All of them make sense. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have one. I'm trying to find it. It's a comment from the Rebbe, but it's not in what you're reading from. It's a different, what do you call them, writing or?
This is called a discourse. There's talks and there's discourses. This is a discourse.
Correct. Okay, I don't know if it's a discourse or a talk, but I'm trying to find it real quick. Let's see. It's how that.
Of course, as Natalie is saying, it raises this issue in her head of if you're so spiritual and holy, why don't you convert? As of course, we have discussed prior on this class, and maybe recently within the past few months, we actually discussed that.
My comment to Natalie would be, and it's what I get asked a lot when I got Jewish friends and they say, why won't you just convert? You do everything and some more than a lot of the Jews do. So why won't you convert? And I say, my comment to them is, if I convert, I'm just another convert. If I am who I am, I'm showing people that God has a place for us. We do not have to convert. I would be just another convert.
I so agree with you, Dixie. And I think that's so eloquently expressed.
That's usually about what we say too.
No, I exactly feel that truth of God needs Noachites. God wants Noachites. So if you read what Netanya wrote, and I think it also sort of relates to this point that Dixie is saying in response to Natalie, but Netanya was saying in response to my question, so it all pulls together. So Netanya wrote here, I'm just reading it to you, I feel that we are all rooted in God's essence as Noachites. It kind of reminds me the truth of God's Torah, and to be able to share it as a non-Jew is quite humbling. And I think sort of what Netanya is saying is like what I was thinking, because I asked myself this question. I'm like, whoa, this is fascinating. I had actually learned it before, and then my son recently learned it, and he thought it was fascinating. He shared it with me. It took me a while for me to realize I had learned it before. That's just tribute to my brain. But I also was so fascinated by it. It was such a fascinating discourse. And then I was like, okay, how does this fit with the Noachide? Because of course, we're talking here to Noachides, but the Rebbe was talking at the time when he was so much promoting reaching out to the world as Noachides. He doesn't mention Noachides. Where does a Noachide fit in? And I felt sort of like Netanya is saying that, to me, it expresses that there's this relationship between God and the nations of the world, Abraham and the nations of the world. It shows they exist as an entity. Meaning, again, this is my thoughts. So this is not what it says in the discourse. So like, like anyone's thoughts, you can take it or leave it or agree with it or argue with it. But I felt that what I was saying from the beginning of time, here's Abraham, the embodiment of kindness. What does that embodiment of kindness do? He's pouring holy souls to the nations of the world. And then when he has the circumcision and he shifts to become the Jew, he suddenly now has a responsibility he didn't even have before for the nations of the world. He's even more responsible for them. That's literally, we add this letter to his name to say, now you are the patron, the ruler, the one in charge of all the nations of the world. Well, where do we see now Abraham's in charge of the nations of the world? What's happening differently? Oh, now we open the door of converts. And of course, there's many other ways, as we know, Abraham and Sarah, that when Sarah nursed the babies by Isaac's weaning party, says that all of those children that drank from Sarah's milk, they're the ancestors of every Noahide, because they drank from the milk of Sarah. So that's how they have inside of their blood something that enables them to be a Noahide. And at the same time, it says that from every relationship that Abraham and Sarah had, for all the years they were married together, when every relationship is supposed to draw down a child, well, they didn't have a physical child for many, many years, but each relationship drew down another soul of a convert. And that's why every convert is considered a child of Abraham and Sarah, literally. So we see in both of these ideas, Sarah nursing the babies and thus producing the generations of Noachides, Abraham and Sarah's intimacy, producing all future converts. And this comes right here. That literally after the circumcision, in conjunction with the circumcision, a letter is added to Abraham's name. So he's not Abraham, he's Abraham, which again, spiritually means he is not exalted beyond world. That's what Abraham is. But he's rather patron of the world, ruler of the world, responsible for the world. And what's his responsibility now going to be expressed? Well, he can't give them any more of these holy souls because now all the souls are going to the Jews. So what's expressed as? Okay, let me open up the door of conversion. Let me find another way to flow this kindness to the world. So that's how I was looking at it. That's what I took from it, was this idea of, wow, there's such a relationship. There's such a connection between Abraham representing the Jew and the world. It's not like, okay, Abraham's doing his thing and the world's doing their thing, and hopefully the Jews connect to God and hopefully the world connects to God. No, it's symbiotic. We're all in this together. And what's happening to Abraham is affecting all the nations of the world. They're totally clueless. They don't know what's going on. They didn't know he was giving them high souls before. They don't know he's opening up for converts after. But what's going on with him is literally changing the spirituality of the world. And the fact that we see, as the Rebbe says, in the Arabic world, more of this holy style people, and we see in the Western world more converts, is literally coming from their ancestors' juxtaposition vis-a-vis Abraham. So that's what I took from it. Because again, I want to say like Natalie, I was like, wait, but our goal is not converts. Our goal is Noachides. And the goal of the Noachide is not to jump ship and become a convert. And we're not jumping ship here. We're running the ship. And we're here to promote God in the world, as Dixie is saying, to have this very special role and mission to go where Jews cannot, and to do things that Jews cannot, and to bring God where Jews cannot. So Noachides have enormous significance to God. And looking within that, I'm like, okay, and here I am, and I'm not. Yeah, there's the Jews, and then there's the non-Jews, who hopefully are all becoming Noachides. No, it's all interconnected. There's such relationship. There's such connectivity between the Jews and all the peoples of the world. That's what I took from this, which therefore then fed into the significance of the Noachide. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
I have found it if you're ready.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, now this is from a book. It's just out. It's The Light Unto the Nations. I have sponsored it in Jack's Merit.
Oh, wow.
And it's from, let let me see. Yeah. Rabbi, oh, Dixie, how can I do this? I forget what I'm trying to say. Rabbi Shepherd, Yaakov Shepherd, and he's in Israel, of course. But anyway, it's an amazing book. I encourage everybody to get it. And he actually,
How did you connect to this rabbi? How did this rabbi connect to you?
well, I donated to him. He's a Kabbalist, and I donated to him. And he's in Jerusalem. And I bought a Siddur, one of his Siddurs. It's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous, this Siddur. And because I wanted to go deeper into using the letters and and so that's how. And he wrote this book, A Light Unto the Nations, and he asked if I wanted to sponsor it.
Beautiful.
And so it's
So
amazing.
appropriate.
So, okay, now, Jack and I have always considered ourselves Gerto Shab versus Noahide. And this will tell you the difference. Gerto Shab is a term to designate a legal status of a Gentile, a non-Jew, living in the land of Israel who does not want to convert to Judaism, but agrees to observe the 7 laws of Noah. Chesed Olam Haba, pious people of the world, refers to the righteous individuals from among the nations. In modern usage, the term Noahide is commonly employed instead of both. However, a potential issue arises with the term Noahide, as it simply denotes the descendants of Noah, regardless of their righteousness. In Hebrew, Ger Toshav translates to stranger. Ger Toshav translates to resident stranger, and Ger Zadik translates to a righteous convert. The procedure to officially recognize the legal status of Ger Toshav has been discontinued since the cessation of the year of Jubilee, with the destruction of the Second Temple of Yerushalayim. Hence, there are no formal Gerim Toshavim extent today, according to the Rambam. According to the Rabbit, there can be a Ger Toshav even without these conditions. However, it can be argued that a great deal are informal ones, especially since it's possible to be a Chesed Ha'olam, even when the Jubilee year is not observed. According to the Rabbit, the appropriate term for non-Jew who follows the 7 laws given to Noah is a righteous individual among the nations is Ger Toshav. Some say even those do not live in Israel. A Ger Toshav diligently observes the 7 mitzvah b'nei Noach, which are the 7 universal commandments given to all humanity. These commandments include abstaining from adultery, blasphemy, murder, theft, sexual immorality, consuming the limb of a living animal, establishing courts of justice, including the first law of idolatry, is utterly rejecting Shitu, the use of an intermediary in the worship of Hashem, such as JC. The Rambam farther teaches that to become a Ger Toshav, one must be accepted by a Beit Din, a court comprised of 3 knowledgeable rabbis, as a righteous non-Jew resident of Israel. Talmud Tractate Avodah Zorah 64b. It is important to note that Ger Toshav and Chesed Ha'olam is said to have a portion in Olam Haba, the world to come. According to the writings of the Rambam, according to Rabbi Meachem, Mendel Schneerson, the status of Ger Toshav will continue to exist even in the Messianic era. This is based on the statement of Halkot Malakim 12:5. All the world, Kol Ha'alam, will be nothing but to know Hashem. In its plain meaning, he asserts, Kol Ha'alam also includes Gentiles. In this work, when we write Noahide, we are talking about any righteous non-Jew who has taken upon himself the 7 commandments given to Noah inclusive of Ger Toshav and Kasit Ha'olam Haba. That's what the book, well,
Yeah,
that's
I
one of
hear.
the,
I mean, what I would say is, I'm not, I'd say that's like a whole other topic, but it's very, it's as he touches on, there's a lot of different layers going on there in terms of
yeah,
that Ger Toshav. But definitely what's no question is the other term he was using, Chasidei Umos Ha'olam. Chasidei Umos Ha'olam, which loosely
the right.
translated means righteous Gentiles, is
Mhm.
really going back to Maimonides, going back to Rambam, as we discussed, and we learned it inside, because there's nothing better than looking at the original source. The primary source is Maimonides, and Maimonides explains one could accept the Noahide laws because they want to live in Israel. It's the only way a non-Jew can live in Israel and not be killed, is by keeping the Noahide laws, or because they want to have a relationship with God. And someone who's doing it not for any duress, not for any compulsion, not for any coercion, because they want a relationship with God, as obviously is true for everyone that we call Noachai today, is one of the Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam, is one of the righteous Gentiles, and does have a portion in the world to come. So every single Noachai, which of course is a term we use today, means by definition Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam. There's no Noachai today who's not Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam. So why do we say Noachide? It's just simpler. Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam is longer and harder to pronounce, and more Hebrew words, but it's exactly the same today. Every Noachide is a righteous Gentile, one of the Hasidei Ummos Ha'olam, because every single Noachide in the world today, no question, has no coercion, has no force compelling them to follow God's laws, besides their own desire for a relationship with God. And therefore,
No, what can
Noachide
I add?
does
Can
have
I add
this and
something to
does
that?
have the world to come.
Yeah, I need to add something to that if you don't mind. Yeah, because it says go on. That's what they call any of this, or Semalam or Ger Toshav or anything's Noahide, what he's saying. That's what he's calling in the article. But what now has come out, and I don't know if you've seen it lately, is the Christians are calling themselves Noahides, and they are into adulterous worship.
Nope.
So how can
But they're not. People
well,
can say
I
what
know,
they want. They're not.
I know that's what
Noachide
I'm saying.
is someone who is a non-Jew who not only gives lip service to the 7 laws, but keeps them. So no
Exactly.
Christian can be a Noachide.
Exactly. But now they're starting, and it's not only Christians, there's other stuff that are coming in on this, which is again the Citra Akra, just trying to, you know what I mean. But that's just what I
Interesting.
was
Well, definitely,
saying.
as you read, one of the tenets of being a Noachide is belief in God
Yeah,
and not belief in any other God.
exactly.
And
Any other thing.
that takes away any concept within Christianity. But if someone was a Christian and they were trying to be a Noachide and yet couldn't give up Christianity, I would encourage them to do whatever they could do, because it's a process, as you all know. It's a process. It's not an overnight decision for many people, especially people that are very religiously devout, and I just encourage them to learn, encourage them to do whatever they can. And of course, understanding that ultimately to be a real Noachide, yes, you have to give up JC, but if at the moment you're learning, you're studying, you're observing whatever you can observe, that's good too. That's good too.
I heard that that some Christians, that there are Christians who, and I don't know why they still call themselves Christians, because they do not believe in anything but one God, but they still have JC as an intermediary. They don't believe him as a God, but they
So that's very
do.
good. That's very good if they're not believing in him as a
Yeah,
God.
yeah, and that's what I think. I don't know. I'm not, but I think those Christians could be Noahides in
Possibly.
a sense.
If you're not viewing him as a God, then that's
Yep.
a tremendous improvement. That is for sure. That is for sure. That is for sure.
Mhm.
All right. Well, hopefully everyone found something here that would really resonated and really made them feel like how important they are as a representative of God among the nations of the world. As Netanya is writing, It's about her
Mhm.
relationship with Hashem and how through the Jewish people she has this relationship with Hashem, and how important to God is every Noahide and their relationship to Hashem and the relationship to God, and how everyone is so precious and everyone has the opportunity to reach out to more people and inspire more people that you're so precious to God and God wants so much from you. And that's the opportunity, that's the gift. We're not only precious, we have a purpose, we have a meaning. We're needed to serve. And that's of course what God is waiting for.